You're listening to Reignite, a podcast where two friends give themselves anxiety over conversations in a video game. I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
Thanks for joining us again.
Yes, episode number 3. I don't know why I said it like that.
Why did you say it like the Tootsie Pop owl?
I don't know. It just kind of happened.
1, 2,
3. Yeah, I don't know why it happened either, but there it is.
So last time, we took you on a journey through Eden Prime. We discovered a Prothean artifact, and we had some very strange dreams. This time we're going to do a quick recap of the section that we played, so that way we don't spend the entire episode telling you exactly what we did.
Yeah, we want to make sure in the early days of this podcast to kind of drift the conversation more towards why we made the decisions, not the effects of the decisions.
Yeah.
In a larger degree, we don't want to be a storytelling podcast. We want to tell our stories, not just the game's story.
Right. So, brace yourselves, because here comes the summary. After recapping the mission with Anderson, Shep gets an opportunity to explore a little and begin setting the tone for their relationships. After speaking with Joker, we're introduced to the Citadel, the intergalactic seat of power for influential races, and a character in its own right. After witnessing a very angry human ambassador, Team Earth gets a chance to explore the Citadel before facing the Council. Doing so allows us to get better acquainted with the other species in the galaxy. We meet the Volus, Elcor, Hanar, Asari, Krogan, Solarians, and Turians. While many Elcor are pleasant, Volus dignitaries harbor ill will toward humanity, and who can blame them? You also get to learn about Shayera the Consort, an almost mythic figure on the Citadel. On your way to meet the Council, you run into a frustrated CSEC officer named Garrus, who has been unable to find solid proof that Saren is dirty. The meeting with the Council is unsuccessful, but you do learn that Anderson has some history he has yet to share. After the Council dismisses your concerns, Udina gives you an opportunity to investigate on your own, unlocking the final section of the Citadel, the wards. You get a couple of leads, so there are a few ways to move the story along. But they amount to the same thing. Garrus, the disgruntled officer with a grudge against Saren, and Rex, a Krogan mercenary being harassed by CSEC, both join your party, and they help you learn about the Quarian woman with dirt on Saren. She approached Fist, a nightclub owner and gang leader known to work for the Shadow Broker, to trade information for safety. Fist betrayed her and arranged for Saren to dispose of her after dealing with Fist. It's a race to save the only hope you have at exposing Saren. This brings you to Tally, a Quarian on her pilgrimage. She was able to procure a voice recording of Saren stating his involvement in the assault on Eden Prime. She insists on going with you because it's the right thing to do. Her evidence is enough that the Council believes Shepard and strips Saren of his rank, declaring him an outlaw. But they continue to ignore the Reaper threat. After refusing to engage with Saren on any scale, the Council grants Shepard Spectre status, so that she can hunt him down on her own. The first human Spectre. After the ceremony, you have a chance to finish up any lingering side quests before heading up to the docking bay. Here, Anderson and Udina have a surprise for you. Anderson turns the Normandy over to you and steps down. They have additional leads, and you can get more information out of Anderson about his past with Saren and his attempt at becoming a Spectre. But then, you're on your ship, giving a rousing speech to your crew. And that is where we ended.
Wow, so much in so little time. They've found a real way to pack a ton of story into this section, which I'd kind of forgotten because I hadn't played this in so long.
Yeah, there's a lot of, little nitty-gritty kind of side quests. You can talk to almost everyone, and, talking to most people, you'll get a quest that you have to then do. Well, you don't have to do, but...
Yeah, a lot of the side quests are easily missable, and or you can avoid them as well.
Yeah. That being said, let's start with our overall attitude during this section. How did your Shepard approach most situations?
Most of them kind of, I'd say with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, but for the most part valiantly. Always trying to do the right thing. I reacted pretty harshly when Garrus shot the thug holding Dr. Michelle in that part of the story. And, after that happens and you save her, you can reprimand him for taking the shot while she was being held hostage. So I think for the most part, I'm leaning towards Paragon, but sometimes if there's an opportunity to say something snarky or like be cheeky to a person of authority, I do that as well.
I mostly chose Paragon or Middle of the Road, but when talking to Rex, I found I chose Renegade more often. Because Rex just kind of has that personality where you could be a little more honest.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that a lot of the time I found myself shutting Ashley down when she was in the party, but for the most part, as soon as I recruited the aliens, I was using them instead of the humans.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, we've talked about this before a little bit, but the human characters that are on your team are kind of as charismatic as wet noodles, at least in the beginning of the game. They grow a little bit, but for the most part, Garrus, Rex, and Tali, especially this early in the game, are way more interesting.
They are. We'll get to them in a little bit, but let's talk about two of the races that we meet off the cuff. The Elcor and the Volus.
So the Elcor are my favorite race on the Citadel.
I love the Elcor so much.
So the Elcor, if you haven't played the game or you don't remember, are a race of kind of elephant-looking space aliens, but without trunks. But they can't, they have no muscles in their face, so they can't express emotion. Their faces are also fairly flat with not a lot of feature.
And their voices are monotone.
So they have kind of trained themselves when speaking common English with humans to state their emotion before they state what they're saying. So even in moments of rage, fear, depression, they all speak like this, very monotone and slowly. Which I think is really delightful, actually, because it's a way of engaging that is I've not done in any other game. There's also no way to convey that really in text. I've seen them in comic books before, and there's like parentheticals and all sorts of other stuff. But I think it's really entertaining to kind of interact with a race that way.
What I like is that the Elcor are essentially making their speech accessible.
Yeah.
They recognize that other species do not have the ability to understand the very subtle differences in their tone, and also they cannot pick up on the pheromones that they excrete when, that's how they communicate their feelings.
Right. Elcor to Elcor, they excrete pheromones that tip off their emotions, but if you're not an Elcor, you don't know.
Right. So they are essentially making their communication accessible for others.
Yeah.
And that's pretty awesome and a little on the progressive side.
Yes. Unfortunately, the Volus is a race, and I shouldn't say unfortunate, because from their perspective, I'm sure it's very warranted. But the Volus, like a lot of the other alien races, alien to the humans at least, which is the shoes that we're filling, are very short and snippy with most humans because they believe that they're growing too big too fast. They think that they're cocky and, they don't have respect for the other races, which is not completely untrue. And so most of the Voluses that you engage with have a preconception. There are some that aren't. There are some that are perfectly pleasant, but for the most part, a lot of them, unless they're diplomatic officials or Voluses in a bind, they tend to talk to you with some suspicion.
Well, I actually had the opposite experience where a Volus merchant that I spoke to was really excited to meet me and was very like, oh, you just came from the colonies. You should buy some stuff. You might need it. My shop is open to everyone. Yay. It was very nice to me. But then the Volus ambassador was very bitchy with me.
Yeah, he was not kind. He wanted to pick a fight with you. In fact, the Elcor kept defending you to him.
Right. And honestly, I don't blame him.
No, of course not.
I don't blame Din at all, because the Volus and the Elcor and the Hanar get shit on constantly, and it's not fair to them. To hear Din tell it, the Volus were there shortly after the Asari were, and they were instrumental in establishing a galactic economy, I think it was. And they were part of the structuring of the Citadel Council. But they don't get to be on the council.
Yeah, they're treated differently because of their, I'm assuming because of their appearance, their stature, a whole series of things. They are well, first of all, and we'll get into this more, but besides the Elcor, I guess, they're the only plus-size race in the whole game. just body shape, and
they are the closest we get to fat.
Right, in space, and I don't think there are females in that race either.
We don't meet any.
There may be. It's kind of a question mark. But yeah, they're the only non-slender or tall or muscular body type in the game, which is a little frustrating.
And then there's the Elcor, who don't get enough recognition, even though they're kind of universally, like... Well, I don't want to say universally, because we only meet a handful of Elcor.
Yeah.
But they come off as very helpful and very kind most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Elcor have a lot to offer. And I think the reason why they are also not involved in the council is because of the way they look. They look different from the Asari, the Solarian, and the Turians.
Those three races are humanoid, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Whereas the Volus are sort of, but they definitely are
They're
more
smaller.
alien, and they're smaller. And then, like I said, the Elcor walk on all fours, and they are elephant-like.
Yeah. And then there's the Hanar, who are...
Essentially space jellyfish.
Space jelly.
And they speak... Their speech patterns are actually also really interesting, because they always say this one because they're part of a hive mind. And so to differentiate the vessel they're speaking through in that moment, they say this one feels this one agrees with you, things like that, which I think is really interesting. And an interesting way to deal with a hive mind, because in sci-fi there have been a lot of various ways of dealing with a hive mind.
Right.
And they're also a fairly unaggressive hive minds. A lot of other sci-fi hive minds, like the Zerg in StarCraft, and I'm trying to think of others. The Rachni, we'll get to them later in this series, but like are often treated as enemies and aggressors, whereas the Hanar are always treated great, but they're not treated aggressively. They are
They're treated
fairly
like a nuisance almost.
They're a fairly passive but pestering race according to the humans.
Right. I lost my train of thought. So that kind of moves us forward, because we mentioned that we don't meet any female Volus, or we don't meet like any other genders except for male Volus, Elcor, and Hanar.
Yeah, and I mean it goes beyond that too.
It goes beyond that. We don't meet any other gender, Turian or Solarian.
Right, and then Asari we only meet female
because they're monogendered.
Right, they present female, but they are of a single gender. Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. Like, so that's weaved into the narrative that they are monogendered.
Yeah.
But with the other races, it doesn't come up. But
it really doesn't.
But they mention that there are the opposite sex of that race, but we don't see them at all.
Sometimes they do. Like, it doesn't come up a lot.
No. In fact, we don't know.
The Krogan, I think, talk about it more.
The Krogan talk about it more, well, because their reproduction is main part of the story as we go on. But also, we still don't see a female until the second game, and it's one.
Yep.
But see with the Krogan.
Actually, we don't see female Krogan until the third game.
Oh right, that was the third game.
Yeah, we don't see female anything until the third game.
Yeah, and so that was strange.
Yep.
And now with the Krogan, it's kind of part of their lore, and we'll get into that more as we play through the game a little bit. Why there are less females and all of that. It's brought up because their reproduction and their creation, because they were essentially created by the Solarians.
They weren't created.
They weren't? I thought they were.
They were uplifted.
Oh, they were uplifted. That's right. But that comes up more as we'll play the game, so we'll discuss that more in depth. But still, it does seem bizarre at this point. Like, playing through this game now, being more aware of that stuff, it just doesn't... And it doesn't seem like there are any non-binary races either. Like,
no,
the
really
characters present as female or male. The only ones I would say that could be close to non-binary is the Elcor. And even then, they still have a masculine voice.
Yeah.
And so...
we don't really know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And here's my issue. Is that the few women we interact with or meet or see, they're all in the service industry to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
We meet... Hang on, let me get my list of names. We meet the embassy receptionist. We meet Avina, who is not really a person. She is a virtual intelligence.
But she's designed to look
But she's
female.
designed to present as female, and she uses she, her pronouns.
Right.
Nelina, who is an acolyte of the consort, Shaira.
Yep.
Shaira herself, who is kind of like the owner of a high-end escort service, but it's much more spiritual and holistic than that.
Yeah.
Like, there's more to it. She is a woman of power, which is great in itself, but she only has female-presenting people in her service, like, as her acolytes. There are no non-binary or male-presenting folks, like, as acolytes.
Right.
So when you walk in to the consort's, like, space, you just see a bunch of Asari and a couple of human women.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And they're all with other men.
And they're all with other men. You see no other women using this service.
Yeah.
Which is a problem.
Yes.
And then when you get deeper, you meet Dr. Chloe Michelle, who is basically the damsel in distress of this section.
Yep. Her whole function is to serve as the motivating factor for the men to save her and then do whatever they're going to do.
There's Rita and Jenna. Rita is a waitress at Flux. Jenna is her sister, who left Flux to waitress at Cora's Den, a gentleman's club. Jenna herself says, "I'm not a stripper. I don't get paid to stand around and look pretty."
Yeah.
All the other Asari or human females are strippers.
Are dancers at this club, and there are no male dancers. Now, again, though, that depiction could be on purpose because Fist, who owns the joint, is not depicted in a fair or kind light, and so that makes sense, but it's still frustrating.
It's very frustrating. And now, I am the last person who will ever have anything bad to say about strippers. Strippers are great, and I love them.
Yes, that's true. It's just, it couldn't kill them to have male strippers as well.
Right, and, like, if there were more women doing other things and not relegated to these roles, then it would be less frustrating. Because I would be less concerned. I'd be like, yeah, of course there'd be strippers. Like, there are diplomats. There are officers. There are, like, it just feels like they are often relegated to these service roles. And the men are the ones going out there adventuring into space. Yeah,
with the exception of the head of the council, who is an Asari as well.
Right.
But that's it. That's the most powerful woman on the Citadel is the Asari counselor. Something I didn't realize until this playthrough is that none of the counselors have names.
They don't.
Yeah, they're just Asari counselor.
No, the Turing counselor does have a name. I just have to remember it.
Okay. But none of the others have names in the story, which is really strange to me and also really frustrating. A lot of because a lot of the other characters in the game, even the minor ones, have names. But yeah, I think that I thought back to this game being very progressive because I was remembering the third game and the second game that allowed you to explore bisexuality a little more. But the first game, really, the only bisexuality you can explore is if you're a femshep with Liara. And again, they are non-gendered, even though they present female. So technically, that's a bi relationship with either shepherd. I don't know. That gets complicated, I guess. Because it's not... Oh, I guess it's similar to non-binary in a sense, right? Since they're non-sex, even though they're presenting female. Yeah. It's weird because they are presented female and they're treated as female.
Yeah, the word they use in the game is monogendered because they do... The ones that we meet do assign themselves a gender.
Yeah.
And they do use she, her pronouns.
Yeah.
I do know later we talk about the mother-father terminology with the Asari.
That's right.
So that's where things get a little confusing.
Yeah.
Because on Earth we would just say mothers because you both present as female and you use she, her pronouns.
Right.
But because the Asari are monogendered, they use the terminology a little differently.
Yeah. And so, like, it's a bit of a bummer to go back to this game with more frame of reference to be disappointed in it not being as progressive as I remembered.
Yeah, there's a huge lack of diversity.
Yeah.
Like, there's only a handful of people of color.
Yeah.
Like, we meet Samesh Bhatia.
Yeah.
Who is, I believe, Indian.
Yes.
And he is a lovely man. I leveled up by being kind to him, and I wanted to give him a hug.
Yeah, his side quest is his wife is being held, her body's being held. She passed away on Eden Prime and is being held because they're trying to do research. And if you do the Paragon route, you can convince them to release her body.
Convince them to release her body, both Paragon and Renegade.
It's just how you do it.
Yeah.
You talk to honor and respect. With Renegade, you probably just threaten his life. Or something.
With Renegade, you basically just say, like, this ends now.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not arguing this with you.
But then you convince them to release her body, and he's able to bring his wife home and be at peace. But that's still a very small role.
It is. It's very, very small.
Now, what I love, at least it seems like, is they got someone of Indian descent to play the character. But also, I don't know that for a fact. So I haven't looked up his voice actor. It could be someone doing a convincing impression, which is more tasteless. But
I'm very surprised you don't have like a list of voice actors in front of you right now, so you can consult it. And
Yeah.
be like, oh yes.
Yeah, for the main characters, it's a lot easier. For the sub characters, or not sub characters, I guess side characters, it's not easy.
Tertiary.
I mean, I will say though that there are strong female characters in the main cast. 3 of them, if we count Liara, because she's female presenting and people refer to her as a her.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're in your party. There aren't really many outside of that.
Right.
There are more, I feel like, in the second and third games.
Yes.
And especially because you meet a lot more of the human military, which has a lot of powerful female characters in the second and third game.
We're going to meet a couple of female characters that are not service industry or fridge.
Yeah.
We'll meet a couple.
Yeah. I mean, we know of the name Matriarch Benezia, and we met her, though we didn't know her name in the last episode. And matriarchs are powerful figures in the Asari community, which we learn in this part of the playthrough.
Right.
But yeah, it does seem like on the Citadel, at least, it is lacking in diversity and in...
all kinds of diversity.
Yeah.
Because as we know, there are no fat people in space.
Yeah, that's something that I'm definitely noticing more now, and that's really frustrating. I mean, I notice it also every time I try and create a character, because I want to create a character truer to my dimensions, which are not rail thin and super muscular. And the customization of your face and hair gets better as the games go on, but it doesn't go on much beyond that.
Yeah, but your body stays the same.
Yeah, you're this fit military character.
Which,
sort of makes sense, but then there's no reason for plus-size characters to not be NPCs.
Right.
Or pilots or whatever.
So from a game design perspective, we can easily say, well, they did it this way so they didn't have to design like 100 different body types.
Right.
But if we're taking this as this was all done intentionally, then there are no fat people in space.
And that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Doesn't make a lot of sense, but why wouldn't there be fat people in space? What could the reason be for this?
Something lame that won't hold water. I mean, like, so, a lot of the people you're interacting with are in the military or in the police force, so it could be because they're fit, but there are plenty of larger-bodied people in those things in life. So, like, it's just, I don't think there's a good reason, even if they did it on purpose. I think it's more from a design perspective.
Yeah.
Because I think that also, when dealing with the human body, their physics, it's lame excuses, but, like, creating physics for a plus-size person is not the same as creating physics for a fit person or a muscular person or, a tall person, short person, skinny person, whatever. And so I think because most of the human body types are the same, and same with the other races.
Oh, yeah.
It's mostly, they all have the same body shape and they just have different faces.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely from a copy and paste design perspective, but it doesn't shine well on the narrative.
No. But let's move on to the best part of this section, our new squad mates.
Yes. So Rex, Garrus, and Tali all join your squad.
Who did you get first, Rex or Garrus?
Garrus.
I got Rex first.
Interesting. Yeah, I got Garrus first because I think mostly because I remembered exactly where he was. I knew he was in Dr. Michelle's office. Right. And so I went straight there, whereas Rex, I didn't remember he was in the CSEC office, so I didn't go there.
So this is what I did. Udina tells you, I have a contact in CSEC. His name is Harkin. Go talk to him about Garrus.
Right.
Anderson then tells you, screw Harkin. He's a drunk. I hate him. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Then he tells you, go talk to Barla Vaughn instead.
Right.
So I already hate Udina. He treats me like trash.
Yeah, he treats everybody like trash.
From my perspective as FemShep, I think he's a misogynistic asshat. I don't like him.
Yeah.
I think he's a jerk to me because I'm a woman.
From my perspective, he's just a jerk.
He's just a jerk. But I think that he's hard on FemShep.
Yeah.
So I decide, forget you, and go listen to Anderson because he's my space dad. And he always has good advice. So I went and I talked to Barlavan, and Barlavan told me that the Shadow Broker hired Rex.
Yeah.
To kill Fist because Fist betrayed him. And he also tells me that Saren also betrayed the Shadow Broker.
Yeah.
So he gives me all that dish. He tells me where to find Rex. I go talk to Rex. Rex tells me about Garrus.
Yeah.
He also talks about Tali the Quarian.
Right.
So because I get Rex first, Rex is like, oh, if we go to Dr. Michelle's right now, we can catch Garrus. And then we go.
It's funny for me. So I went to Harkin first because I also wanted to talk to the general because there's a storyline with the Turian general and the consort. And so I go to Harkin. I treat him like trash. He keeps telling me that it's not a church and to stop preaching, which I think is very funny. He repeats it constantly.
I hate Harkin.
Yeah, you're supposed to. But then after that, so if you go there first and you talk to Harkin, he tells you about Fist. You try to go see Fist, and that's where you meet Rex as he's pushing his way.
Right.
Because the bodyguard is throwing him out because the bodyguard of Fist is also a Krogan.
I also want to call him Fisk.
I know.
Why is that?
Daredevil.
Oh, I didn't watch Daredevil,
Well,
so I don't know why
Kingpin.
I want to do
Yeah,
that.
I don't know either. So, this Krogan bouncer is throwing out Rex, and you run into him, and he goes, I have no quarrel with you, human, and then pushes past you.
I think that's literally what he says, too.
It is. I remember. And then, I go find Garrus at Dr. Michelle's. That whole thing happens. And then he's like, hey, I heard that there's this Krogan. He was causing trouble at CSEC. We should go check it out. And that's when you meet Rex. Yeah. And so it's interesting that the story diverges tiny bits and certain things don't happen depending on the way you go.
Yeah.
Like, the reason that he's in custody with CSEC is because he's trying to pick a fight with Fist.
Right.
But you can either witness it or not, which I think is kind of cool. Because I never quite remembered that.
Right. So, I never saw Rex before finding out from Barlavan that he was in CSEC.
Right. Whereas I still spoke to Barlavan, and he told me about it. But I had already met him and comment on it because I had ran into him in the club.
Right. So, you went for Garrus first, I went for Rex, then swap, and then it is the firefight in Cora's Den.
Yeah, where you're shooting. There are no strippers. They're gone.
They went home for the day.
And now you're just shooting soldiers. At first, because there was one soldier on top. So in Cora's Den, it's a circular room, and the bar's in the center. And then there is an Asari dancing on the top, because the top of the bar is a pole.
Right.
And when you go into that firefight, there's someone up by that pole. So I thought it was one of the Asari with a gun, because I couldn't remember, and it wasn't.
It's just
there
are no Asari.
Well, there are no women. It's just men soldiers.
Right.
There are no women bad guys.
Utilization of the Asari because they're badass.
They are badass.
They're naturally biotic.
And then after you fight your way through, you fight your way. The Krogan is also gone. He jumped ship apparently. You find some dock workers. You can convince them to beat it, which I did, Paragon wise.
Yeah, I did that too. It was very easy to just be like, guys, come on.
Yeah, come on. Do you really want to die for this guy? And they're like, oh, yeah, we should go.
So, after that all gets resolved, did you have Rex in your party?
Yes. I had Rex and Garrus in my party.
I had Rex and Garrus too.
Yeah, so we don't have different perspectives there.
Right. So, Rex will kill Fist no matter what you do.
Yep.
You can either be like, that's life, or be pissed. I chose to be pissed.
Yeah, same.
So, there's that. Did you try and fight your way back?
Yes.
I did not. I said, fuck this shit, and I ran.
Really?
Yes.
So did you run past them?
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I just fought my way through.
I triggered my barrier, and I ran.
That's really funny.
Because there's a time limit. And, granted, I could probably fight my way through and make it there within the time limit. But
yeah.
I felt like, no, I have to get to her now.
Yeah, I remember the time limit being more than enough. And so I fought my way out. Also, Rex and Garrus make it kind of easy because Rex will just push his way through.
Right. So that's why I just ran.
Yeah.
Because I knew they had my back, so it was fine. Because also I'm trying to play like I would play.
Right.
If I had just found out she's meeting an assassin right now, I would have been gone. I'm already there. Like, I was gone.
Yeah, I played it more analytical. I was like, well, I need to get there, but I'm no use to her if I'm dead, so I better kill these guys and get there. And so that's kind of really funny.
Run at my problems.
Yeah.
Run through my problems.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, and then, you know, you meet up with Tali like we talked about. Another firefight there. It's funny. I think I'm playing on a casual mode, but I remember still these fights being a lot more difficult. Again, I'm playing on PC and the controls.
That was a longer fight.
Yeah, me too. My controls, like I said, are better on the PC for me anyway. But from the minute you recruit Tali, what I love about her is her snark. That she's not taking shit from anybody. Like, my favorite line is when she's explaining why she's on her pilgrimage and why she was out and about and recorded Saren. Rex interrupts her at one point and goes, "We should listen to the Quarian." And she goes, "My name is Tali." Like, fuck you, dude. I have a name. Don't call me. I'm not calling you Lizard Face. Like, I love that attitude.
I think it speaks to the way that Quarian are treated in general.
Yeah.
Because Udina is very surprised to see her, and he asks her what she's doing away from the flotilla, which sparks her to explain what her pilgrimage is. It's
reminiscent. Like, to me, my brain associates it with Space Amish. Like, the way people default treat Amish people, and they also have a Rumspringa, which is like them going out and seeing the world before they go back to the tribe, as it were. And I think that in my brain I connect it that way, and you know, people crack jokes about the Amish all the time, and I think it's the same idea as, like, you consider this race that you don't know a lot about, or in this case, you know, I guess Amish is considered a religion.
I do
lifestyle.
Not know enough about it.
I don't either. But you consider something you don't know, and you make assumptions and act on those assumptions. And so I see a parallel there with the Quarians and how at least the humans that interact with her.
I think you can definitely make a case that the Quarians are paralleled with Amish culture.
Yeah.
Because there's that isolation, except the difference is with Amish, it's very anti-technology.
Right.
What's the right word that I'm looking for? It's not necessarily technology. I guess advancement?
I guess. There's better language to describe this, but you understand what we're saying, listener. I think, but yeah, it seems like with the flotilla, it's the opposite. Like, they dive into technology, and, you know, it's almost all about technology and nothing else.
But I think there are other parallels as well, because there is the religious persecution. Because the Quarians were chased off of their home world. Yeah. So I think it's very Israeli almost.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that too a little bit. It's interesting. I would be curious to talk with the game devs and the story writers to see where they pulled everything from. Because you can definitely see things from human culture, modern human culture, that they're using for these archetypes, as it were. Because a lot of them are, at least initially, fairly shallow archetypes that do get built out, which is kind of the whole point of this game, is to discover and learn about these characters and these different races at a pace that's digestible. And if you read all the dossiers that you get, you know, on the menu screen as well, you get even more of that information.
Can I tell you the moment that I fell in love with Tali?
Sure.
It's when she says this. The pilgrimage proves we are willing to give of ourselves for the greater good. What does it say about me if I turn my back on this?
And that, in reference to the Saren incident.
Right. Where she tells Shepard, I want to come with you.
Because I have to see this through.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's like 18, I think. She's a teenager, essentially. Yeah. And she already has such a strong moral compass. She knows what's right, and she's going to do it. Yeah.
She's one of my favorite characters because of how powerfully she presents herself from the very beginning. Like, we haven't gotten to it yet, but Liar is not discovered in a position of power.
Right.
You know, whereas Tali is defending herself, and she's ready to run and gun against these assassins as you're getting there, and doesn't even know you're there until after the firefight.
She throws in a grenade and gets into cover, and I think she's part of the firefight.
She is, yeah.
It's over too soon for me to really see what she can do.
But it's clear that she doesn't have a second thought about fighting for herself.
Right. And I think she was the first character that I really this character is my best friend.
She also has more agency than a lot of the other characters. Like, Rex is very two-dimensional. He's an assassin. He just wants to kill people until you get to know him better. Garrus also is fueled by revenge. He has multifacets, but not at that early point on the Citadel. Yeah. He's very, I just want revenge because he's making it a bad name for my race, Saren. And, which is fairly straightforward.
I didn't fall for Garrus, as a character until 2.
Yeah, well, I think you could safely say that about a lot of the characters. The only characters that are really fleshed out are Caden/Ashley and Tali, and Liara to a degree as well.
Yeah.
But Rex and Garrus kind of get the short end of the stick as far as development until much later in the game, and even then, you learn more about them later. Rex, you get a ton of development towards the end of the game. We'll get to that, but you get almost info dumped with it, which is frustrating because I would have loved to know that sooner.
Yeah, with Rex, you kind of have to keep poking at him to get information. You have to check in with him constantly.
What I did like, and I won't go on too much of a tangent, but with Grunt in the second game, who's your Krogan party member.
You mean your lizard son?
He also has walls, but they designed the game in a way where you can continue to poke at him and talk to him all the time, and he lets it go a lot faster. Whereas with Rex, there isn't much development early for most of the game.
Which we'll find out why that is.
Right. There's a reason for it in the narrative, which makes sense, but as someone who really likes Rex, especially what Rex represents in the later games, it's frustrating because I'm looking at him now, knowing that knowledge because I've played the games before and going, ugh, but what you become is so great. So,
what you could be.
You could be so much more.
Let's go over our side missions.
So, I remember the side missions being a lot more fun on the Citadel. They seem more of a nuisance this time around. So there's the Asari Consort side mission, which we talked about briefly. Which I did. You meet Emily Wong, who's a reporter. There's a side mission with her trying to get intel on Fist, which I did. There's Conrad Verter, who is sort of a side mission. He is the fanboy.
Actually, I want to talk about Conrad Werner for a second.
Sure.
So Conrad Werner is this nondescript man who, when Commander Shepard walks by, he gets very excited. Commander Shepard, will you talk to me for a second? And you stop, you chat with him. And you can either be very nice or you could be a dick.
Yeah.
Which, depends. I chose to be, cautiously nice.
Yeah, I did middle of the road as well.
Because I noticed that there's no catcalling on the Citadel.
Correct.
So anytime someone's trying to get your attention, you can safely bet that they're actually trying to talk to you as a person.
Right.
Like Emily Wong, Commander, will you talk to me? I have a question. So anytime you get called out or spoken to in that way, someone is actually trying to talk to you.
To engage with you, yeah.
And not harass you.
Right.
So because of my personal experience as a woman working in New York City.
Yeah.
And just existing, I am very cautious about people yelling out to me.
Yep.
So my instincts and my video game instincts, my real world instincts and the video game instincts are at war.
Yeah.
Because video game instincts say, talk to everyone.
Right.
And real world instincts are please don't look at me.
Yeah, no, of course.
Ignore me. But with Conrad Werner, I approached him. I let him talk to me. I was not rude to him, but I also was not overly inviting.
Right.
And I don't know if there is a right way to approach Conrad.
So yeah, unfortunately, we are burdened with foreknowledge of knowing where that conversation leads to.
Ultimately, it doesn't matter how you treat him.
Right. He still goes on his path. and attributes it to your conversation with him one way or another. He's an odd character. I don't love the way he's voiced. He has this strange lisp that I can't tell if they're trying to make him sound effeminate or if it's just the voice actor's performance. But I get this weird space from him that I can't identify, and it's not even speaking like, ew, they're trying to make him act, whatever. It's more that the way he talks is off-putting.
Right.
And so it immediately puts me off, even though...
He gives you the douche chills.
Yeah, it's really weird. And even before I knew his path and how he comes up in the later games. But that said, I did the same thing. I was cautiously optimistic with him. I was kind enough. Yeah, I don't know. I always found that interaction very strange, but I always remember him.
Yeah. Which
is a sign of good writing and performance. But yeah, what were the other side quests I did?
There was Chorbin and Jalid, which we did very differently.
We did. So I found Jalid first. After recruiting Rex, I heard him making a fuss, and so I talked to him, and he tells me about this plot for his partner Chorbin to try and kill him and steal his data. We don't know what the data is, but that's what's being stolen. And, asks us to talk to his partner to try and calm everything down. When you go to confront his partner pulls a gun on you and attacks you with mercenaries, and once you defeat them, he begs for his life. He says, sorry, I don't want to die. I thought you were going to come here and give me the data, and, I was going to protect myself. And they're like, what data? And you talk to him, you find out that they've been scanning the Keepers, which are, for lack of a better term, maintenance creatures on the Citadel. You don't really know what they're for at this point, but you just know that they're always tinkering with the Citadel and working on stuff and making sure things are working and moving stuff around. And so then, of course, you're furious, so you go back to Jalid and pretty much tear him a new one and get him arrested. Having played the game before, I knew that I can get access to the data about the collectors and then scan them myself. But in this playthrough, I couldn't. The path I chose, my Paragon wasn't high enough to convince him, but my Paragon was high enough to get him arrested. And I was very confused until you told me your path for doing this.
So I saw Chorbin first. After getting out of the meeting with the council, Ashley points him out to me. And I stop, I chat with him, and he tells me, well, I'm trying to scan the Keepers because I think we could get some useful data. And I'm afraid of being arrested because technically you're not supposed to bother them. And I don't think scanning is bothering them, but I don't want to be arrested. So you are a dignitary, to say the least. Like, you are a person of note.
Yep.
So you could get away with a lot of stuff. So Shepard offers, hey, I'll do it. And you get paid. So I was like, yeah, sure. I will walk by a Keeper and be like, scan credits. Yay! That sounds easy and delightful.
Yeah.
But when I heard Jalid complaining to a CSEC officer about how his partner was going to kill him, I stopped and asked him some questions, and he told me about Chorbin, and my immediate response was, oh no.
Uh-oh, drama, and you're caught in the middle.
Why?
Yeah.
So I go, and when Chorbin sees me, the firefight does not happen, because he already knows who I am.
Yeah.
So he, dismisses his guards, and he tells me what's been going on. So my favorite moment comes when you talk to Jalid again, and you get to say, sigh.
Yeah.
You just get to
I saw you post a screenshot of that.
And then you're just like, I should kill both of you. You two are so dumb.
Yeah. No, it's one of the best. It's a renegade response, right? Essentially on the tree.
And I'm just like...
It's my favorite, yeah.
I relate so hard to that moment.
Yeah, of course.
Every time I interact with anyone at work, my response is, sigh. Why do I have to do this?
Right.
So I was able to keep scan the not collectors, that's a different thing. Different thing entirely. Scan the Keepers, which, that's a funny thing.
Yeah, you'll know more in later seasons.
We'll tell you later. It'll be fine. Yeah. So I got to keep that mission, and I did not finish it because I think there are some Keepers that you can't get to yet.
Yeah.
But that is still in my queue, so to speak.
Yeah. So
yeah, I didn't have the Paragon Renegade options for that because of the way that I played it.
Right, whereas mine relied on that. It's interesting. And I know that there are missions I've missed as well because I know the game really well that you can go back to and finish later, which I guess I'll have to do. But, I try and get as many as I can remember just because I like the interactions that happen. In fact, I didn't go to Flux at all when I did this most recent playthrough.
Oh, so you didn't pick up the Jenna mission?
No.
Okay, so Matt did not do this, but I did this. I spoke to a young waitress because, of course, she's a waitress, named Rita about her sister Jenna, who was doing some work for CSEC. Now, this brings me back to the way that women are treated, because Chelik is perfectly happy to take a young woman, put her in a very dangerous place, and use her to collect data.
Yeah.
Not giving a shit about how much danger she's in.
Right.
And when you try and convince her, like, this is a bad place for you to be, he interferes with you and tells you, you want to help her? Then do something for me.
Yeah.
And, like, I'll pull her. And it's just so manipulative.
It is.
And, like...
But that's also the trend of all of CSEC. It's why Garrus pulls away from them is because...
Because they're so manipulative.
Yeah, they're manipulative and they're into everything, and without, there seems to be a stopgap in the logic with CSEC.
Garrus even says when you go to Cora's Den after the firefight with Fist that a lot of stuff goes on in Cora's Den that CSEC turns a blind eye to.
Yeah.
And he believes that Fist was paying someone off.
Right.
So Garrus is, at this point, exhausted with the corruption within his own organization.
Yep.
And I think we can see that in our current political climate.
Yes. To say the least.
Yeah. There's a lot of corruption going on everywhere.
But yeah, it's interesting to look at the run of characters and quests in this part of the game in my life now versus back when. I am frustrated with certain characters. I do like the redemption arcs of certain characters, like the general who you convince to man up and be a general and apologize to the consort and clear some stuff up and become friends again after the falling out. They had a relationship. It didn't last. And instead of pursuing the friendship, he kind of started telling tales and cutting himself off and drinking. And you convince him to kind of stand up and not be a man. I hate that term. But like...
Fortify.
Yeah, be valorous and, pull himself up by his bootstraps. And he does. And that was really satisfying for me because I like encouraging people in life. That's very much... my role amongst my friends is encouragement and believing in them. And so being able to do that in the game was a lot of fun and satisfying.
I told Araka that he was super pathetic.
You're not wrong.
He's a whiny man baby.
Yeah,
he's
you're not wrong.
She rejected me! General Araka! Like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah, it was very dramatic.
You sound like an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, I don't blame her for leaving you, dude. And... like, it worked fine, and he called me a bright kid and whatever, so...
There you go. All right, kid.
Fine. Fine, I guess. Though my favorite thing was Garrus being like, this is pathetic. What could a woman do to make you feel this way? And I was just like, buddy, just you wait.
Yeah, just you wait.
Buddy, you wait. You'll find out. One day you'll get the talk.
Yeah, it is kind of funny to see the character interactions based on what I know is coming for them in the later games, which is interesting to me, and I'm curious how it'll affect my future playthroughs already, thinking about those things.
Yeah, we had to try and put them out of our heads a little so we don't metagame.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about our side missions, our new squad mates. Let us turn now to the grousing corner. Complaints. Who's got them?
I mean, I do. So, as you know, based on the first episode, I already have a lot of complaints about the first game. In hindsight, being 2020, it is not a perfect game. Narratively, it's still one of my favorites. The overall story, I feel like, is almost flawless. But graphically and mechanically, there are a lot of issues. For one, Shepard runs funny. Especially FemShep, but I'm not playing FemShep right now.
That's super weird.
But definitely Male Shep also runs really funny. Also, every time you end a conversation with any character that's humanoid, except for the Volus or the Elcor, they look to one side and then walk away. So their head turns and then the rest of their body moves. Now I get this is a limit of the technology. They wanted super reactive facial features and like for you to be able to be engaged when you're talking. The conversations end the same way. You make your last option, dialogue happens, stops, character that you're talking to looks away and wanders off. It's just very bizarre.
I didn't notice that so much.
Watch the next time you play. Watch the humans and how they end a conversation.
I just rewatched my playthrough.
That's true.
I took videos.
But so those were my two biggest grievances. Oh, and the elevators. What becomes a running gag later in the games, even meta within the game, they thought it would be a great idea to avoid loading screens in the first game by covering them up with elevator rides. Anytime you had to load in the game, whether it's on the Normandy, in the Citadel, or other locations, you're on an elevator ride while the game loads. And while in theory I get it, in execution it's terrible. The elevator rides are long, you can't move, you just stand still. They have the news playing usually over the elevator, which sometimes gives you side quests, but it doesn't indicate it. You know, you have to check your logs to see that it's even there, and it's very obscure. I don't like it. It's very boring. In the second and third games, there are loading screens, and there are no more elevators. Or there are elevators, but you're actually doing stuff while you're on them.
Yeah.
That's just very frustrating for me as a person who games as much as I do. I hate wasting time. And every time I got into an elevator in the Citadel, I felt like I was wasting my time.
The only thing I like about it is the party banter.
The party banter is sometimes very good, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. When it doesn't happen, it just feels forever long.
I wish it was more consistent, because there was a very funny interaction between Tally and Garrus, where Tally says to Garrus, "I'm glad that the imminent destruction of organic life could provide you with more exciting career opportunities."
Right, because Garrus does nothing but bitch about his job, a desk job at CSEC, and is excited now to be working with Shepard and not working with CSEC anymore.
Right. So I like that they have kind of a sparring friendship.
Yeah, and that continues in the later games. They have some of the funniest lines together in the later games as well, which is why I often paired them together.
They're my faves. Team Dextro forever.
They are mine, but I think I'm going to try and engage with other characters more. Like, I'm going to try and have Caden a lot in this playthrough. Just because I don't know the character that well, and I want to get to know him better, even if he still feels like a wet blanket.
Maybe he'll charm you.
Maybe he will.
Never know.
Probably not until the third game.
So my main complaint is the micromanaging.
Oh, yes, the gear system.
I hate this. Why do I have to choose gear for everybody else? You're fucking adults. You're adults and warriors in your own right. Go pick your own fucking gun.
Yeah.
Why am I paying for your gear? You have money?
I do like that you can at least have them auto level up, and the game will pick the best options. But yeah, so that as a whole, and that was another complaint I had. So I agree. The whole gear management system, while interesting and impressive, is not streamlined at all. Now, in the later games, they dump it completely, which is also a terrible idea, and I hated that. But like, there's a middle ground, and they just don't find it.
I think in 3, it got so much closer.
Yes.
Because you could customize your stuff.
Yeah.
But you didn't have to worry about anyone else.
Right. But in 2, like, you could pick full suits for yourself. I think everybody, but not everybody else also. But, like, there were less options.
You don't have to worry about anyone's armor.
Yeah, in the later games. But Shepard also doesn't have a lot of combinations of options in the second game. I feel like it was the third game is where it got more granular. So they kind of rebound. But yeah, in this game, you pick your armor, you pick your weapons, you pick mods for all the weapons and armor, and you have to do it for the whole party.
Yep.
Now, I get the idea. Looking at Mass Effect as an RPG, and a lot of RPGs, especially Final Fantasy games, you do that. You micromanage the gear and weapons for all of your party members.
I hate it.
In other games, there's more of a streamline to it, and you're usually replacing a weapon, a helmet, and a body piece of some kind, and then maybe an accessory. So you're not looting stuff every 30 seconds. That's also the problem with this game versus other RPGs. In other RPGs, every time you fight a boss, you get an upgrade, or every time you accomplish a puzzle, you get an upgrade in other RPGs. In this, every enemy you kill, every person you interact with, every dialogue you solve, you get gear. And so much of it is useless crap.
Yeah.
And so that makes it overwhelming too. I'm at a point now where I don't even upgrade my gear until I'm done with a section of the story. I just slog through it because it's just so overwhelming.
I am trying to stay on top of my grind.
Yeah.
I don't know how long this is going to last.
Yeah.
I may eventually just be like, fuck it.
It's very frustrating.
I get the best guns. Fuck all you guys.
Right, exactly.
Like, I just...
I mean, that's another thing is the party AI is not great. You can command them to do stuff, which becomes way more effective in the later games, but in the first game, it's okay. I mean, you have the radial menu where you can pause it and use their abilities, but it's very stop-start, and it kind of ruins the fluidity of the combat, which they figure out later on. And also the overheating weapons. I am a spray and prayer. For those who don't know what that means, my aim is not great, so I hold down the shoot button and try and aim. You can't do that in this game.
No, you can't.
Because you overheat your weapons, and then you're useless. You could switch weapons, I guess, but if you're specialized in pistol and you switch to a sniper rifle where you have zero experience with, you will be completely useless in battle.
Yeah. I know that some people really like the weapon overheat because it's a very different take on
It's
weapons.
not just weapon ammo, yeah, which they end up doing later.
But I felt it did not work, and I was
Yeah.
glad when they switched over to heat sinks.
That said, with all of these grievances, if you agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments on the episode post or on social media.
Send us an email.
Yeah, like we would love to hear your thoughts because we're not the end-all be-all on this. And I know there are tons of complaints about this series as well as things people love. It's one of the most divisive audiences for a video game. I want to give a shout-out quickly. Although by the time this airs, it'll have been a while. But a member of the Dinosaur Machines Game Club podcast, Dave Grima, who's a friend of mine, on a recent episode talking about a different game, Mass Effect 3 came up, and with extreme aggravation, he goes, people need to stop complaining about that ending. I'm so pissed they changed the ending. The whole game is an ending. The whole game is the ending. Which I agree with quite a bit. But you may not. But I enjoyed that moment. So Dave, if you're listening... Thank you for agreeing with me. But yeah, I think as a whole, I'm excited to see where the story goes based on previous knowledge, but I still am not sucked into my version of Shepard yet.
I think I'm there. I'm sorry, I got distracted.
No worries. It happens.
We're recording in Stormageddon's apartment, and there are some outside noises that are catching my attention. Like, I heard some knocking, and I don't think it was on his door. I think it was the neighbor's door.
And MJ is a ferret, so...
I'm just like, what's happening? I hear noises. What's going on? Okay, I apologize. Yeah, that was my biggest grievance, was the micromanaging.
The gear system.
So, I do not consider myself to be a micromanager.
Right.
I do try to keep, like, my personal shit in order. So, like, maybe I micromanage myself.
Right.
But I don't like to micromanage other people.
Right.
Because you're an adult. Like, do your own shit. Today, I asked my fiancé if he would handle a wedding thing for me. And the only reason why I say... handle it for me is because I was the one who initiated the contact with this vendor.
Right.
And I was originally going to meet with her because, like, I handle my own stuff. But because we were recording tonight, I asked John if he would handle it. I do not need to be like, I need you to send me pictures of everything. I need you to keep me up to date. No. I reviewed with him like, hey, this is what we're doing, right? Yes? Cool. Reviewed the plan. Made sure he had the money that he needed. Everything is great. I don't have to worry. I just asked him to, like, send me a message when he was done and confirm that everything's done. Because I don't need to micromanage him. He is a grown man.
Yeah.
He can listen.
Yeah, I'm a people pleaser, so that lends into wanting to make people happy, which means helping them with their shit. It's just kind of how I roll. But that said, I do agree. I think that the level to which you have to micromanage, like, imagine if you worked in the military, and I haven't been in the military, so I don't know, maybe it is the case, but imagine if they picked out each piece of your gear from your boots to your hat and like made you change it when they said so, I mean, that may be the case. Again, I don't have any military experience.
I believe it's kind of the case.
Yeah. So I think it could lend to that a bit, maybe your commanding officer would finalize all of that.
But I feel because you're operating as a Spectre, you're operating outside of the military. Like, you have military experience, and 2 of your squad does as well, and you're still part of the military. But the rest of your squad is not.
True, but you are treating it like a military. Everyone still refers to you as Commander Shepard.
That's only because they're too shy to admit that they don't know your first name.
That's true. Nobody in the universe knows your first name.
No one knows. Your birth records were lost.
Yeah. They just know your last name.
Not even your mother knows.
As someone who went through most of his life being called Storm, I relate to Shepard so hard.
Someone called me Bradley in an email today.
That's weird.
Right?
That's not okay.
It was just like, my signature clearly says my name. But okay, fine.
Whatever
you want to call me.
But yeah, I think that I am really looking forward to the next section of the game. Because when we move on to the next part that we play, it's the isolated section where you find and recruit Liara.
Yep, that section is called Finding Liara. We are going to search the Artemis Tau cluster for Liara Tassoni, who is our connection to Matriarch Benezia.
Right, though we don't know why yet.
We don't know why. So we are going to basically play until the end of that mission.
Yeah, whatever the last cutscene is, and before you get back, and I guess after you get back on the Normandy.
Returning to the Normandy is always
is usually the stopping point.
Yeah. So save once you're back on the Normandy, you're done.
And to those playing along with us, we appreciate it, and we hope to hear your feedback, questions, concerns, what your playthrough is like so far, what your Shepard is like so far. I do like that in your summary of this episode's events, narrative-wise, you said she because you're reading it and your Shepard's a she.
I really tried to say they.
I know. You said she a couple times, but that's fine.
I tried.
I know. That,
I wrote they.
Yeah. But you, like I said, I often refer to Shepard as she. It's been a struggle to say he because I haven't played a male Shep in a while,
So let's dole out some thanks. I would like to thank David Boyle, who is the amazing artist who came up with our logo. You can't find him online because he doesn't have any stuff for us to promote. But when he does, I'll be ready.
Yeah, we'll definitely be promoting it. But you can thank him if you see him in the street somewhere.
That would be weird.
That would be weird. Don't do that. I also would like to thank Dan Bull, though he doesn't know it yet. His theme is his...
Try that again.
Yeah, I can't speak. I'm not even going to edit that bit out. That's for your entertainment. I want to thank Dan Bull. We're using his rap song about Mass Effect as our intro music. And I really dig this song. I've always dug this song, and I thought it would be perfect intro music. But he is an incredible artist who's on YouTube primarily, as well as, of course, wherever you can buy records. He does tons of gaming music. He does music about the internet. He, does freestyle raps about shitty YouTubers who suck and who deserve to be crapped on, a la Logan Paul, but we'll leave that alone. But he's a really talented rapper. He's in the UK, and I really dig his stuff, so definitely go buy all of his things.
We should maybe send him an email.
I have. I just haven't heard back yet.
Okay. Let's see. Where can they find us on the internet?
So, of course, I am at DJ_Stormageddon on Instagram and on Twitter. I am Stormageddon on Facebook. You can find other podcasts I work on all on my Patreon, patreon.com/Stormageddon. Everything that I work on, I post there. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1, and all of the money I get from my Patreon goes to improving recording setups for all my podcasts, including this one, as well as ways to improve the content, reach out to developers, reach out to advertisers, things like that. So any money that you can throw my way allows me to grow all of my brands, including this show.
I'm going to be helping out Matt with some rewards for his Patreon by making some art at your request. For a one-time reward, you can either get a fan fiction that I will custom write for you. I haven't figured out the word limit on that yet, but I will let you know. Or a cross-stitch of your favorite quote, and I will design a pattern for you and make it for you. Probably about 5 by 7. we'll work out those details. You can find me online. I Hoard Libraries on Twitter. I Hoard Librarians on Instagram and Tumblr. And also, Reignite is on Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, not Snapchat.
Nope. Email, though. You can email us at reignitepod@gmail.com.
Yes, please do.
Yes, we love to hear from you. Also, big thanks to Mary. She does a lot of the writing up and summary work for the show, does a lot of the organizing as well, and she is our Tumblr. If you see the Tumblr, it's not me, it's her. Like, she pretends that it's us, but it's her. And that's fine. I'm managing other things. But thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this experience. We're really having a lot of fun doing it. And I remember off air you mentioned what we should say as a sign off, and I have already forgotten.
I'm going to say it, that's why.
That's why. Okay, well then, please, MJ, sign us off from this episode.
Well, I'm MJ.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
We should go.